Disclaimer. This video is for entertainment purposes only. Do not attempt this at home. Vitiated how-to will not be responsible because you decided to be a cheap ass and not hire a professional.
On with the show.
Welcome back to this fine fucked up day. We're going to replace that alternator on a 2013 Chrysler Town & Country. Should say crunchy. God, it's killing my pocketbook. Anyway, as you can see where it's at, and I'm doing things a little different. Alright, let's get to this. That little push pin right there, it's on the bottom. There's the oil pan. You need to pull that out with a screwdriver or the proper tool. Have you ever known me use proper tools? Ha! Negative. And of course you got to take the wheel off. If I have to explain how to jack it up and all that, then you just don't need to know it then. Anyway, take the wheel off. I don't want to hear it. Everything I've read, this is the easiest way. You'll see why. Phillips head screwdriver, another push pin there. Down here is another one of those, I guess, push pins. There's a box there, and it pulls out this fender well. And supposedly it's a half-hour job that some 12-year-old did, so I'm about to see it. Well, I guess I should show you how to pull these out so you don't tear them up. You can put a screwdriver there. I wouldn't advise it. Put a screwdriver or something behind it and just kind of work at it. It takes two hands to do it so you don't break it. So you'll do this and kind of pull with two hands. Same way with this one. Use that in your hand, and then that way you pull them out because they look like this. And if you remember these from the old vehicles, if you're old enough to, yeah, you break them, they're a pain in the ass. But there's that. Just to make things easier, you go on the back side of the fender well, two more screws, and two more of those push pins, just so that way you can get this whole plastic out and make it easier. While you're down here getting those push pins, you might also just go ahead and get those two bolts right there that are 10 millimeters. I know I forgot to tell you, because I forgot about them. But you remove those 10 millimeter bolts, and it'll pull that cover to expose the alternator and the AC unit. Alright, now that you got the cover off, you need to pay attention to how this belt is ran. And that kind of looks like this power steering pump back there. If my power steering ever goes out, it's going to stay out. You can kiss my ass on that one. Man, if I'd have known this, I'd have done it when I did the motor mounts, engine mounts. Shit. Anyway, see how it goes over? This is your tensioner pulley. Some clowns say take that out. If you don't have to, don't touch it. Anyway, follow the way the belt runs. The belt goes under the balancer, goes over the tensioner pulley, goes around power steering, goes over an idler pulley, goes over the top of the alternator, goes down under the AC compressor, back over, I would assume the water pump? I don't know. It's a big pulley. And then back down here. If you need to do your AC compressor, you might as well do it while you're here. And any other pulleys, you might as well do it while you're here. Because it's going to be a pain in the ass if you don't later. Because you're going to have to do most of this anyway. Alright, back to what we're doing. Alright, as you can see, let me take this back off so you can see. There's a little square hole up in there. As you can see earlier, but let me take this out. Because some clowns don't explain how to do this. that little hole right there, that's a 3/8 ratchet. Will fit just fine. When you put the ratchet in though, make sure you kind of push the button in so that way it'll go. Alright, then the old saying, righty tighty lefty loosey. Yeah, you go that way and I'll show you. Get your wrench with a closed in. Take and pry it like so. I gotta switch hands. It's hard to do it, so you can see. Ready? And then you just push up like so, and you see how it loosens the belt. And then you take the other hand and pull the belt off. Really ain't nothing to it. Just be careful that you are strong enough. If you need to, get you an extension pipe if the wrench ain't gonna work for you, which I should have done, but I can't get a pipe underneath here. All right. While you're holding this to where the belt will come loose, the only way you're getting that belt off is you got to pull it off this pulley here, whatever this is. Because if you look at all the other pulleys, they're all grooved, and you're not getting them off that. Trust me, I tried. But it'll slide right off this one because it's smooth. So then that way you just take the belt off and you're good to go for the moment. All right, I had to shut my hood so you can see this. Next thing you're going to want to do, as reference, that's the line for the AC. Oh shit, sorry. I'm trying to hold this. Now this is important. Before you do this, you need to disconnect the battery. If not, you're going to find out the hard way. All right. That little red tab there, that's behind the alternator. I assume that's from the way it is. Maybe the regulator part of it. I don't know. If you look, I'm trying to. That little kind of silverish black, there it is. That right there, that's a 13mm nut that you're going to disconnect the battery cable with. You take a long screwdriver to pop that up. Pop up both of them. Then that way you can pull that one there, you can pull it off. And all you do, let me pull out my trusty beater, is you come from this way and you just kind of work your way up like so, and then you just push that, and then you got to come from this way and pop that, and it's really nothing to it. But now you got to keep in mind, because that's the catalytic converter, and you're supposed to make sure you do it while it's cool. Have you ever known me to do anything that you're supposed to do? Ha, nada. So there's that. And that 12mm right there, use a regular 1/4-inch drive. Let me scratch that. It's not 12mm. 13, I'm sorry. I don't know why the hell I said 12. 13mm. Use a small socket, not a deep well, because you're not going to get it past the catalytic converter to get to it. Once you extend that little red clip thing, then you can pull that right out with no problem. Once you break it loose with the 13mm, you can unscrew it by hand and just pull it right off. Then that part will be done. All right, next thing we're going to do is remove the bolt, one of the 3 bolts that's holding the alternator up. That's a 13mm. That's the bottom of it. Come over here and go up. And on top, there's those 2 13mm there. You're going to want to pull the first one completely off. The second 2, you want to loosen them up just so it's nice and loose but not falling on you. Next up, we're going to back down here. This is the AC compressor. That's a 13mm bolt. That one there's a 13mm bolt. And this is a 13mm bolt. Well, those are 2 nuts and these are 2 bolts. Once you get the AC loose, Then you're going to want to pull this one off, take that nut off, take that nut off, and then you're going to want to pull these two bolts out here. As you can tell, it ain't too bad. I found it easier to use an extension, a smaller extension with 13 millimeter. But it's tight getting there, but you can get up in there. You just got to take your time with it. Well, it's pretty obvious. The clown had said to leave the bolts in and just loosen them a little bit. Don't do this for a living. Yeah, go ahead and take the one bolt out, but leave one of the bolts in. Leave it in with about 3 or 4 threads just holding it. That way, because you're going to have to push up on the alternator, get the damn thing out. So if you're pushing up on it, you're fighting with 2 of them to try to get them out, even if you remove the air compressor. So just pull the one out because they're easy to pull, and just leave that one in. It's not a problem. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to pull that 13 millimeter bolt right there, or nut, I'm sorry, and then this one right here, we're going to pull that 13 millimeter. And then come down the air compressor and pull these two 13 millimeter bolts. So that way we can drop the air compressor. Just for an added peace of mind, I'm gonna remove the plug for the AC compressor right here, just because. I know how things are, and it'd be my luck it gets in the way. Oh, and a side note, these here for the AC lines, do not touch them, because you will get a face full of, I think it's 134 or 134A in your face, and it's not really good. In order to get it off, you gotta somehow get a screwdriver and push this tab that way, because if you try to push on this side here and it breaks. So you have to pull that out, and then you gotta push that down and it slides off. This is kind of important, well it is to me to know this. That one back there that's holding the compressor, you have to put this ratchet and socket upside down like that, because that's the only way you're getting it in there. Because I tried with an extension, I can't get it, and you can't use a regular shallow socket because of the those dowels or whatever. So and you gotta have a good bit of strength, because it's a pain in the ass to do. Alright, now that you got the nuts off those studs, here's what you're going to need. You're going to need a really short 1/4 inch drive E7. If you ain't got an E7 and you can't find one that's short enough, like Harbor Freight doesn't carry those little ones anymore. If you have cobalt sockets that look like this, 5 millimeter will do the job, but it's probably about that long, so I'm going to show you how to solve that problem. Alright, I scooted the compressor out a little bit and I stuck that on there, and what you can do is hold this socket with your finger and you can slide the compressor forward, and this and that will fit in that hole. You probably might want to tighten that alternator bolt back up a little bit more so it's not touching here, because if it's touching this, then it's going to make you harder to do this. But if you have the proper little E7, then you'll be fine. If you don't, and you have the cobalt set or something like that that has those sockets like I showed you, it'll be a 5 millimeter. That and a pair of vice grips, and it'll work just fine. Well, you can use the vice grips, but funny enough, that cobalt one was just short enough to where I can use my ratchet. So that was cool. I made out all right on that one. So far, so good. Another little side note, you might have to put the bottom bolt back in to get the last little bit of that stud out, because when it gets right to the end, it's really hard to hold and get it. So it ain't gonna hurt none to put a couple threads in. Alright, now that you got the bolts and the studs out of the AC compressor, it's time to get that last bolt up there out of the alternator before you drop the compressor down, because you're not going to be able to reach your hand back in there to get the bolt out. Nobody tells you that. You find out the hard way, but I'm telling you. Alright, now that you got the compressor down at the furthest most spot, you want to pull out this E7 one here, or if you're doing like I have to do, what my Cobalt set, it's a 5mm, but it's a special socket kind of thing that I got really cheap. You just pull that out. A little side note, when you pull that stud out on the bottom of the alternator, you take notice that it's different than the other two studs that you pulled out. So you need to make sure you keep that nut that you pulled off of it with that stud. I don't know if it makes a difference, but like I always do, I separate everything so that way I know where it went back. Because some things will go in the same spot and some things won't. So just be mindful about that. Alright, now the next thing is getting this down this way and out. Which, as you get the idea, it's not going to be too hard to do, because I can almost do it one-handed, but not quite. But I ain't strong enough to hold both, the phone and that, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this down, the AC hose down, or wait a minute, it looks like the water hose, whatever fucking hose it is. I know this is a water hose here. I'm going to pull them both down and pull the alternator out. Okay, I figured it out so I can do it one-handed. You get it positioned like this, and then you just roll it out like so, and it rolls right out. So all them clowns that disconnected all that shit, the fan, that water line up there, and all that other garbage, the air box, you guys were idiots. Alright, within closing, it took me about 2 hours to pull the damn thing out. It's probably going to take me about 20 minutes to put it back in, because I've been videoing it, then I had to go find other tools, had to take a break, my hands are messed up and all that shit. But realistically, the average person without my issues could do it in an hour. Somebody said a 12-year-old did it in a half hour. Yeah, he probably did. He's probably done it more than once too. But if my stepson was 12 years old, it'd have took him about an hour, because his hands would have been smaller and he'd have been easy to get it out. So it really ain't that hard. It just looks that hard. And all them people that pulled all that stuff off made it really hard, because it's not. Just greasy. When you go to put the alternator back in, this is the easy way to start it, because if you don't, it's going to be a pain in the ass. And you really don't have to pull it to get the alternator off either. That stud right there that holds on the bottom of the alternator, you don't have to pull the stud out to get the alternator off that stud. You have to pull it out to get it out of the vehicle. So when you go to easy way to do it, instead of doing it the hard way, pull the alternator off first and then unscrew it with the E7 or a 5mm weird socket set like I got, whichever, however you get it off. Wait till after you get the alternator off to do it. Now, when you go to put the alternator back on, put that back in first, because there is plenty of room to put the alternator on and pull it off with it. Because if you notice right there, I have the alternator all the way against that, and there's plenty of room. So all you do is just slide that back on, and it'll make it a lot easier to deal with it. Because if you try to put that stud in with the alternator on like this, you're going to end up stripping it. So that's the easy way to do it. Thanks for stopping by. Oh, and one more thing. If you don't know if the batteries, not battery, if the belt has ever been changed, change the belt while you're at it. You'll thank yourself later. And a side note to this, it really wasn't the alternator. It's the damn pulley. If you can watch, see how that is? This damn thing is a scam. Because they ain't like the old alternators to where they would just spin. This stupid thing has a clutch, so it's designed to go out on you. Purposely to do that. And supposedly it's to save the system, but if you know anything about old cars, the old alternators that had the steady pulleys always charged the car even when it was idle. This damn thing is not supposed to charge at idle. It's designed to charge while you're driving. Whoever thought of that moronic idea was stupid, because that's 160 amps. That's going to take quite a bit to charge it, especially if it idles. But anyway, there's that. You can buy the rebuild kits for this if you had time, but I've heard of a few people doing that, letting it go for a while and it frying their PCM, so I didn't want to go take the chance, because the price for the pulley where I live is $145, and it's $80 something for the kit, and then you got to pay for shipping, and you got to wait 6-7 days. I can't afford to wait 6-7 days, so for all that, it was just cheap spending the $300 something, almost $400 what I spent on the damn alternator, because I got one a lifetime warranty. So there's that.